A father and a son on an innocent hunting trip together were enjoying themselves when something unimaginable happens. A massive Kodiak bear rushes in to brutally attack and maul them. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying Kodiak Bear attack on Brady and Steve Penn. Welcome to Final Affliction. Brady Penn was an experienced senior airman in the U.S. Air Force in 2021 when he suddenly received a call from his father, Steve. This was not uncommon as he spoke to his father regularly, and so he picked up the phone. He could tell his father was excited as he quickly explained that he had won a hunting lottery, meaning that he had been awarded a permit to hunt for elk on Afognak Island. The island is famous for having some of the best hunting and fishing opportunities in North America and attracted lots of visitors during their holidays. It has an impressive diversity of wildlife, including the largest elk in North America, the Roosevelt elk. This animal is a prized catch among hunters and is something to really boast about catching. It's also impossible without a permit. The permit meant that only certain people were able to hunt in the area to avoid the destruction of the fragile ecosystems. You are able to enter the lottery for specific animals that you are allowed to hunt, and today, Steve had finally been selected and he wanted his son to go with him for a week-long trip. Brady immediately agreed as he knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and wanted to spend time with his dad. For the next few months, the pair prepared for their adventure as they knew that they would have to use their survival skills if they wanted to stay on the windswept island of Afognak. The island was well known for its unpredictable weather and strong winds, so they had to make sure they knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. They tested their equipment over and over to make sure they were prepared, undertook intensive hikes nearby, improved their shooting abilities, and made sure they had a plan for anything that may go wrong. Brady had been trained by the military, and Steve had lived in Alaska for over 30 years. They both knew what it took to survive. After months of training, they were ready for a trip of a lifetime. On the morning of October 12, 2021, the father and son duo were ready and waiting for their trip. They were stood on the dock waiting for their plane to take them to the island where they would be left all alone for a week. The wind was already increasing in strength and the morning fog was thickening with every moment that they waited. The seaplane floated slowly towards them, giving the men one last chance to turn back and cancel their trip. With the increasingly bad weather, it was becoming apparent that if any issues arose during their time away, it would be almost impossible for an emergency rescue to save them. They decided that they would be able to deal with any problem that came their way and boarded the plane to take them to Afognak Island. It was a very small plane, and despite being battered with turbulence for the duration of the 45-minute flight, they managed to arrive on the island in relative safety. The beach was empty and the reality of their solitude was quickly hitting the pair. The pilot prepared to leave before turning to the men for some final advice. "That hill right there is going to be your best bet for a campsite," he said. "I'll see you in a week unless we hear from you sooner. I can't say I envy you out here in this weather." With that, he got back into the seaplane and flew away, leaving the father and son duo truly stranded. They hurriedly began setting up their tent to protect themselves from the night that would quickly be setting in. They managed to erect it just in time as more wind and freezing rain began to unleash onto them. They eventually slept knowing that the next few days would really put their survival skills to the test. The next morning rolled around and the weather had not improved. The men knew they couldn't wait for too long, so begrudgingly packed up their belongings and began the difficult hike through thorns and thick bracken, and Brady could feel any exposed skin being ripped and torn by the passing branches. After receiving a beating from the elements, they made it to a ridge and found a game trail towards the valley beneath them. They followed the trail together, hopeful that they would be able to find some elk soon. Suddenly, Brady spotted a herd in the distance and they began to stalk their prey, but lost them as suddenly as they had discovered them due to the tough terrain. They began to feel disheartened, but continued their trek in the hopes that a miracle might happen. Just like that, they abruptly found themselves face to face with a massive male elk. Instinctively, Brady fired his gun in the direction of the animal, knowing that he had only a split second to react before the elk would smell or hear him and bolt for cover again. The 1,200-pound animal crumpled to the floor, and just like that, they had accomplished their week-long goal in just 60 minutes. The duo were elated and happily began to cut up the elk so that they could take it back to their camp with them, and eventually take some of it back home. They knew that they wouldn't be able to take most of it back, but they could certainly try. They brought some back to the camp, but left the rest in a bright white game bag that they decided to hang in a tree so that nothing could get into it. The next day they returned, but quickly realized they couldn't see their bag in the tree anymore. They assumed it was the wind that had knocked it down, and so continued towards the area to check it out, cocking their guns just in case. They walked through the long grass, feeling at peace among the singing birds and long grasses. Even if their bag and game were gone, they were still able to appreciate that they were in a breathtaking place and were thankful that they were able to come on this trip together. Suddenly, the meadow fell silent, no birds at all. All they could hear was a low growling, and that's when they knew that they were in big trouble. Just 30 feet away, a huge Kodiak bear was charging right towards them, running through the trees as if they weren't even there, its eyes fixed on Brady and Steve. Before Brady could even blink, let alone draw his weapon, the bear was upon him. He was swatted to the side by a massive paw, pain shooting through his back as the bear put its entire body weight onto his spine. He was trapped, his rifle pushed beneath him, and with the extra weight on top of him, he had no way of moving. While he was thinking of what to do and how he could possibly survive this, the weight was removed from Brady's back. His father was pulling the bear off of him, giving him a final chance to save them both. The bear was immediately able to push Steve off of it, and after throwing him to the ground, was now also on top of him. But Brady was freed from the bear's weight and was holding his rifle. Despite the pain in his body, he struggled to his feet and fired his gun without a second thought, without even looking. The shot ripped through the bear's back hip, and with a ferocious roar of pain, the animal ran back into the trees. The pair quickly assessed each other for injuries, never taking their attention from the trees in case the animal came back. Steve had a few puncture wounds in his hands from the bear's teeth as he had been defending his son, but he had been wearing strong gloves and they were able to take the majority of the damage. Brady's trousers had been ripped and there were claw marks down his legs, but he was mostly unharmed. They were thankful that nothing worse had happened. They made their way back to their camp slowly and carefully, keeping a special eye out for the murderous bear. Luckily, they were able to make it back, and while they couldn't sleep as they listened out for any noises outside, they felt relatively safe within their camp. Luckily, this is the end of their story. The father and son were picked up by the plane the next day and were able to escape. Their teamwork, preparedness, and military training had saved them, proving once again that research and a little bit of luck will always provide you with some safety in the end, allowing them both to narrowly avoid becoming a food source for the bear and meeting their final affliction.